review, though, Tone. One of our most anticipated films of the summer ever since its trailer dropped. And when that trailer dropped, we were just like, fuck, this feels like Aliens.
Mm-hmm.
This feels like Aliens. We'll touch on Borderlands next week after it hits digital. Great. So Alien Romulus, Tone, it's out. It made a metric fuck ton of money. It did really well at the box office. It did really well with not only the critical score, but the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. By all accounts, a huge success for Disney. Once again, another R-rated Disney flick under the 20th Century Studios banner.
Smart, do it.
Another R-rated film that just has made them a ton of fucking money on a pretty modest budget compared to other summer blockbusters.
Yeah.
But Tone, I want to talk to you, man. I want to get your thoughts. I mean, we went into this with pretty high expectations. There were some things that we were wondering about, specifically the cast. Was this cast going to be up to the task of carrying the human side of an alien? Because that's the one thing that's always been important in the earlier Alien films, anyways. In Alien and Aliens, was the human characters, Ripley and Hicks and Hudson and all those guys. They were all huge parts, and we weren't sure what to expect from this cast of relative unknowns. But Tone, after seeing Alien Romulus, after having some time to process it, how did you feel about it, and how do you feel it stacks up in the Alien franchise?
Well, one of the first things that you actually kind of just clued into is something I want to circle back that you had said actually months and months ago, was your concern about this movie because it was a relatively unknown cast. And the one thing I will say about that is I felt like for the most part, especially like a couple of the main players, did a good job carrying this movie for being kind of no names. The 2 or 3 in particular were very, very well, actually. But this movie felt more grounded, bringing it back to like a more horror roots. I feel like it did a great balance of bringing back that horror tension and also, interesting enough, more so than any of the other ones, really actually zooming in on something that is one of the most terrifying elements that they seem to just like, here it is, and then next phase, which is focusing on the facehuggers for a while.
A lot of love.
That was pretty fucking brilliant. I think that was a great...
They're creepy as fuck!
They are creepy as fuck. And it did a good job of that environmental tension. It made it feel like it was an old Alien once again, like you felt that. But on the flip side, it also felt like Aliens at times, which you got some action in there and things of that nature. Matter of fact, I feel like there could have been just a little bit of, not necessarily more action, just more well-placed action. Matter of fact, again, it felt a lot like Alien Fireteam, the movie, which was pretty cool, too. Like, I got a lot of vibes of that as well. So it balanced all those things, I felt, overall pretty well. And I was very surprised with the cameo choice, and I know that's still also up for some discussion as well too. But it threaded, and this was what I didn't think was going to happen. I know they retconned something very loosely, and I don't recall exactly what it is. I think it's a nuance, but they did thread in Prometheus, Covenant. They're all threaded and connected.
Yeah,
and I didn't expect that, and I thought that was done really well in some subtle ways. They kept the timeline structured strong, which is good because when you're coming into something like this with relatively unknowns, a story in the middle of already established shit, you have to be able to, if you want it to be standalone, that's fine, but if you're going to thread it, you need to make sure it's done with good, tender, loving care.
Yes. And
I think for the most part, they did a good job of that. I think one of the choices that they did, and again, I know we're going to get into that more once you get in, you get talking, but it's really cool, but it was almost too much. Like, if they were going to do it, it should have been just like a little bit, but it was actually quite a big focus. And so all that said, I was really dialed in the entire time. I really, really had a great time with it. The only thing, if I had to say complaint or critique, and we'll talk more about it momentarily, but that 3/4 of that movie was pretty much perfection to me.
Yeah.
But when we got into that last final act, I know what they're going with, and I understand it, and I'm not saying that it's necessarily wrong or not, but a lot of the events, and listen, it's an Alien movie, so sometimes these things similarly do happen, but it was a little bit extra over the top of getting through to end the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of events that you're just like, I know I'm suspending my disbelief because this is a movie, but it's like, come on.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of. I was doing a lot of like, come on, man. Now you had me all this entire time, then now you're doing this. Now it's a slippery ending for me. So, but overall, I think it's a really good movie.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's great. But I do think it's a good entry that lives up to the rest of the movies, because I feel like it already stands stronger than potentially a couple, and that's a big thing to say as well too. And maybe not so hard. I know I'm one of the few that will defend Resurrection a little bit, and even Covenant, just because I love the series. Yeah. But I know they're definitely two of the weaker ones for for everybody else.
No, I agree with you 100%. I think this is arguably probably the best Alien movie since Aliens, in my opinion. I think it is. It takes all the best elements of Alien and Aliens for horror and action, but it works because of the cast. It works because you have characters that you care about. You have characters that you're like, okay, I dig the relationship. I mean, it brings it to the forefront where they're just not there to be fodder. Right. You know what I'm saying? There's legitimate storylines between these characters that you're just like, oh, I can get behind this. I can root for these guys and girls and whatever. And it's like, okay, yeah, let's do that. I want to have some meaning, because that's the thing, man. The xenomorphs are obviously the star of the show. Everyone loves to see fucking real rubber suit xenomorphs.
Look
fucking awesome. But they are the star of the show. But you got to have that counter. You got to have the adversary, but also you got to have that human component that makes you care about the characters that the xenomorph is hunting. It makes it more tense. It creates more, like, just tension overall, just like, oh, my God, please don't die. So, I mean, you had that part going on. And, Tone, I agree with you again. The first 2/3 of that movie are really, really fucking top-tier Alien-type films. Everything about it is masterclass, and Fede Alvarez deserves a lot of credit. The final act, I definitely do think, is going to be something that is somewhat polarizing. There's going to be some Alien fans that are probably going to be like, I fucking love it. You know, there's going to be some that are kind of like, well, I don't know. But that's all going to really depend on how you feel about Ridley Scott's Prometheus and Alien Covenant, and how you feel about Alien Resurrection. Those two things. If you love those movies, you're probably going to love what they try to do here. Now, I want to give him credit. Does it work for me? Sort of, not really, kind of. You know, it's somewhere in the gray area.
Yeah, same.
But I appreciate him taking that chance. Not just, he could have played it safe. He could have played it real safe, had it ended like either Aliens or Aliens, Alien or Aliens. But he said, fuck it, I'm going to do something different. Also, doesn't surprise me they went that route, because Ridley Scott was a producer in this. So I'm sure he gave Alvarez some notes going, hey, my movies are fucking awesome.
False endings.
Get something in there to, draw a connection to it. And so, like, that part of it, I do agree that I feel like there's going to be a lot of room for discussion, some debating whether or not it was the best way to end it. But there is this one thing that, like, look, I love fan service, okay? I love cameos. I love when certain characters show up unexpected. One happens in this movie. And I do think it's kind of distracting in the sense that you have this movie that prided itself all through production and all through the lead up to the release about being practical, awesome practical effects. And when they did use special effects, it looked really good. Until we got to this cameo, which, again, I don't mind the choice, but I do mind the execution of it. Now, like, look, the de-aging thing and bringing people back into something like Tarkin, General Tarkin, and was it Rogue One?
Yeah.
Certain things, like, okay, whatever, but if it's done right, it's not distracting. They try to do it here, and I can't help if the modest budget might have hurt that a little bit, because we've seen it done right, like in Indiana Jones, like the young Harrison Ford looked really good. But in this one, you see a character, and just the animation, especially when the character talks, it just looks cringefully bad, like really bad.
Like, I kind of wish they'd almost would have done just build the fucking prop.
Build the prop, or honestly, man, just find an actor that looks like this character, doctor him up with makeup, and use your generative AI that you did to make his voice. It's just like, I like the chance that you took with it, and I like the fact that you were doing it was a little nod, but if you can't do it in a high quality way like the rest of the movie, it is going to stick out.
And I feel like that's a lot of people feel, I think, a little questionable about that. I didn't expect it to be so much.
You and I kind of knew right away, because, like, when they find this person, and they bring them out, like they're all obscured in the shadow, like they're all kind of hidden, and you and I were just like, we know who that is.
I knew right away.
We knew who it was, which was just like, okay, that's cool. But again, with the way it executed, you're just like, next time don't do that. I mean, we don't need it. But overall, though, dude, man, like I said, from start to finish, it's one of those movies, man, and we've talked about this before. When we watch a movie, if I'm doing this or if I'm checking my phone, something's amiss. This fucking movie went fast, dude. Like when we got to a certain point, I was like, holy shit, we're an hour and a half into this. I'm like, this is moving.
Yeah.
But it was just because it was so engaging. The character stories were engaging. The xenomorphs were terrifying. A lot of the tension around those moments, we were just literally holding your breath. Mm-hmm. I mean, the way they used sound in this movie was fucking rad. Mm-hmm. Whether when it was out in space or there's a certain segment with the face huggers where I was just like, this is fucking dope. Mm-hmm. How they're using, or like the less is more approach when it comes to sound. Mm-hmm. Like, it was so cool. So, I mean, great production values, great direction, good performances. The xenomorphs were terrifying. Other than that final act that I think is going to seriously be something that people are going to be stuck on for a while. Not in a bad way, but just a way where you're just like, you're close to a 10. Mm-hmm. You were like in that 8, 8.5 range. You were almost there. But I feel like, but what this does, dude, and, the way this movie opens up, it really finds a way to connect with Alien. And I thought for sure when this movie ended, we were going to get like a connection to Aliens. Mm-hmm. But I think what we're seeing here is that we're going to start a new path, a new storyline that could end up at Aliens. We don't know that because, like, I think this movie takes place like 20 years after Nostromo.
About 20 years after Nostromo,
and
30
that's
years
50
before.
Years before Aliens. So that gives us
30 years before, yeah.
If Fede Alvarez does this right, you could take it up a couple years leading up to Aliens. If you want to do it, or like I said, he could just be like, we're going a different direction. Mm-hmm. So it'll be really curious to see what they do with it. But by all accounts, this movie made a ton of money. We know Fede Alvarez says he's not too, he's not going to rush into a sequel, but he's got some ideas about what he wants to do going forward. And the one little thing I thought he brought up that I hope they don't do, even though it's a cool idea, is he was like, man, I would love to do like a joint film with Daniel Trachtenberg and do an Aliens Predator spinoff where maybe I'll direct half and Daniel directs the other half. Look, I love what Trachtenberg did with Prey, and I love what Fede Alvarez did here with Aliens. Keep them separate. Mm-hmm. We don't need them together. They're both badass. I get it. They're in the same universe. That's cute. That's great. Keep them separate. We don't need them to battle. I feel like we lose a lot of the human element, and we lose a lot of the tension. It's just not the same. Stick to what we're doing. You're on both these franchises are on a really good path.
Right, and the problem is when you bring the human element in those, like, it's a little bit overwhelming to think that they're always equivalent, which is interesting because in every version of these, a human is battling these, but they got to go up against so much odds. It's almost like if you do that, like, you got to almost have a battle world, like, all right, the Predators are here, there's a bunch of xenomorphs on the loose, they're hunting them. Oh shit, the Colonial Marines just showed up. Like, but yeah, let's just keep it the way it is. I would think it would be neat if the next one that Fede did would lean a little bit more like Aliens, and then it doesn't have to be, I don't want fucking Corporal Hicks, I don't want these guys, it's 30 years before that anyways, but bring in some Colonial Marines.
Yeah,
We've only really seen them once in
Core's
video
been around for a while. We know this.
Yeah, bring in the Colonial Marines, bro. Let's do some fucking.
I'd love to see that. Because I mean, wouldn't that be cool if like Ridley Scott produced this one, but then you get James Cameron produce the next one, get his expertise with Aliens.
Yeah, absolutely, and of course, the series is coming out next year.
I keep forgetting about the series.
And that comes out. That's before Prometheus, right? Or is that?
Ooh. Oh yeah, it is because it's called what? Alien
Earth, which is again, it's getting to that thing.
It's
where
it's like the absolute beginning of the I don't know if the beginning of the alien race, but like the beginning of this timeline that we have. The story timeline.
That's a slippery slope because one of my biggest problems with AVPs are like these xenomorphs have existed out in space for so long, and all of a sudden they're on Earth hundreds of years beforehand. So I'm just a little worried. But anyways,
I don't think is AVP considered canon? I don't think it is it? Is it just kind of a spin-off that's kind of fun?
That's a great question. I don't know.
I would hope it's not canon. I hope it's just kind of
I think it is canon. But, well, I mean, they don't talk about it, so maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that's one of the retcons. They didn't mention anything about it, so maybe that's one of the things. Yeah. But overall, we want to get you guys and girls' thoughts. Let us know in the comments below. If you're watching this on YouTube or if you're listening to us on Spotify or iTunes, let us know in the comments what you thought of Alien and Romulus. Did you love it? Did you hate it? And where do you rate it in the pantheon of Alien movies? And there's a lot of them. I still think this is probably the third best one for sure. If I had to say if there was something close to it, maybe Prometheus. I like Prometheus better than Covenant, but Alien 3 I would say is probably pretty close to this. I like the Alien 3. A lot of people fucking hate it. I understand why, but Alien 3 was fucking
Gotta
cool.
watch the director's cut a little better.
He does what he can. He does what he can with that director's cut. But the studio fucked that whole movie up more than anything. But let us know in the comments below. We want to get your thoughts on Alien Romulus.